The Food and Agriculture Organization, UNICEF and the World Food Programme say sustained assistance is the only way to avert famine in South Sudan. The UN Security Council is due to meet on Tuesday to discuss the situation. CGTN's William Denselow reports from New York.
The new figures are startling. The UN estimates that almost 2/3 of South Sudan's population, more than 7 million people, will need food aid this year. It's the highest level ever seen in the country. Now, 3 UN agencies say the latest estimates represent a 40% increase in the number of people facing severe food insecurity compared to this time last year. Now, years of fighting and inadequate harvests have propelled the country into a state of extreme hunger. Funding from the international community remains low, suggesting possible donor fatigue. And the UN's humanitarian response plan for South Sudan has so far received less than 6% of the $1.7 billion it needs this year. Now, the United States is the second biggest aid donor to South Sudan, just behind the European Union. But keep in mind that lately the US has shifted its position on South Sudan. A long-term backer of the country's fledgling independence, the Trump administration has signalled its displeasure at the failed effort to reach a peace agreement. Now, last month, the US ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, said President Salva Kiir's government was an unfit partner. She harshly criticised the promotion of several military figures sanctioned by the United Nations. The US government followed that by imposing an arms embargo on the country. The United Nations Security Council is due to meet on Tuesday to discuss the situation in South Sudan. William Denselow, CGTN, New York.
Well, let's bring you more now on the situation in South Sudan. I'm joined here in our Nairobi studio by Peter Smerdon, the regional spokesperson for the World Food Programme in East Africa. Peter, pleasure to have you with us. Indeed, the situation in South Sudan, at least 40% of the population facing starvation. It's desperate, it's dire. What kind of support needs to be provided to South Sudan right now?
Okay, so the good news is that in 2017, a famine was declared in South Sudan in February, and the international community mounted a huge response, including China, the US. Everyone came forward and gave us, the UN and other agencies, enough money to push back that famine and stop it by June last year. The bad news is that indeed, by May to July, there will be 7.1 million people who will need food assistance. They're severely food insecure. That's at the height of the lean season, when the harvest runs out. It's the hungriest time of year. And they will go hungry and they will perish if they don't get sustained assistance again this year. So we had a bit of a miracle last year and we were able to push back famine, but there is a chance that if there isn't a similar effort this year, that there may be a famine declared later this year.
And so you've had a famine in 2017, another one this year. Are we also looking at long-term sustainable solutions to avert this, sort of just going forward, that it's not something that we face every year?
Yes, we are to a certain extent. For instance, the United Nations World Food Programme gives out school meals and helps communities build assets like dams and things so they can become more resilient. But the main problem is conflict. Conflict destroys everything. Conflict freezes everything and sends millions of people outside the country, 2 million, 2.5 million, and 2 million displaced inside the country. So basically the only way for this situation to be finished is for there to be peace. Because without peace, these needs will just go on year after year and many, many more people will die.
And staying with the concern over conflict in South Sudan, how does it impact on your ability to provide relief supplies?
Yes, I mean, last year there were over 1,000 humanitarian access incidents, which consisted of killings, looting of assistance, threats by various armed groups. 28 aid workers were killed, and that 1,000 incidents was more than there had been in the previous years since the conflict started in 2013. So the situation is getting worse. But President Salva Kiir did last November say all roads should be open to humanitarian goods. That hasn't happened, but that's what we need. We need all sides to the conflict. If they can't stop it, they can at least let humanitarians in and save people's lives.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. Peter Smerdon joining us here in studio on that crisis in South Sudan. Of course, he is from the World Food Programme.